Every great adaptation begins with a question, not how to recreate the original, but how to rediscover it. How do you bring a story that has lived for centuries into a modern cinematic language? How do you honor the past without becoming trapped by it? And how do you create something that feels timeless? For a filmmaker approaching Layla and Majnun, the challenge is unique. This is not merely a story, it is a legend, a poem, a spiritual journey, a cultural treasure, and yet it must also become cinema. The first decision would be visual. What should this world look like? Many historical adaptations attempt to recreate the past in exhaustive detail, every costume, every building, every object. But perhaps realism alone is not enough. Because Layla and Majnun does not live solely in history, it lives in imagination, in memory, in poetry. The visual language of the film must therefore exist somewhere between reality and dream. The desert becomes the film's central canvas, not merely a location, a character, a living presence, sometimes beautiful, sometimes terrifying, sometimes indifferent, its endless horizons reflecting Majnun's inner world, its silence speaking louder than words. Color would play a vital role. The early chapters of the story might be filled with warmth, golden sunlight, rich textiles, lush gardens, the colors of youth and possibility. But as the journey progresses, the palette begins to shift. Earth tones, deep shadows, moonlit blues, the visual world becoming increasingly sparse, increasingly introspective, as MAJNUN himself changes. The camera should move with intention, not rushing, not distracting, allowing moments to breathe, lingering on expressions, on landscapes, on silence. Trusting the audience to feel rather than merely observe, because some emotions cannot be explained, they must be experienced. Then there is Layla, one of the greatest challenges of any adaptation. How do you portray a character who is both a person and a symbol? The answer may lie in restraint. Layla should remain mysterious, not because she lacks depth, but because much of the story unfolds through Majnun's perception. We see her as he sees her, through memory, through longing, through imagination. The beloved becomes larger than life, and yet remains profoundly human. Music would be equally important, not as decoration, but as storytelling. Traditional instruments blending with contemporary orchestral textures, ancient melodies meeting modern cinematic soundscapes, a soundtrack capable of feeling both familiar and timeless, rooted in history, yet speaking to audiences everywhere. And perhaps the most important creative decision of all would be resisting the temptation to explain everything. Modern storytelling often fears ambiguity. It rushes to provide answers. Layla and Majnun does the opposite. It invites mystery. It welcomes interpretation. It leaves space for the audience, space to wonder, space to feel, space to discover their own meaning. Because the greatest films are not experiences we simply watch, they are experiences we carry with us, days later, months later, sometimes years later, images returning unexpectedly, questions lingering, emotions refusing to fade. This adaptation would aspire to become that kind of film, a work that transcends genre, a romance, a tragedy, a spiritual odyssey, a cinematic poem, all at once. But every film ultimately depends upon its characters, its human heart. And in the next chapter, we turn our attention to the people at the center of the story. Who are Layla and Majnun beyond the legend? What drives them? What do they fear? What do they sacrifice? And why do audiences continue to recognize themselves within these ancient figures?